Morning, good afternoon, and welcome. I'm very pleased to be joined by Timo Bollerhey. Timo is the CEO of Hintco, and Hintco have obviously been designed the H2 Global platform. So welcome, Timo. Thanks for joining.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, the H2 Global platform is very interesting. It's been set up obviously to address, I guess, the beginning of demand for the H2 for green hydrogen. So could you give us a little bit of background to H2 Global? It's an interesting mechanism, completely different to stuff that we've seen before.
Yeah, happy to do so. I mean, H2 Global tries to address that chicken and egg situation that we have at the moment in the market, because there's quite a significant gap in between sort of the production cost for green hydrogen and the market price, or if there isn't even a market price, but the price that you can achieve for a green product in the markets. And that's sort of provides that first mover disadvantage that we try to overcome. And we want to stipulate the supply and the demand side. And starting with the supply side, we really want to provide that investment security that is needed to start investing today. So we want to go from all the MOUs that are being signed to real FID. And the projects, what do they need? And I've got a project finance background myself. They need long-term offtake agreements. They need fixed pricing, and they need a clear legal security in all regards to, standards, certifications, regulatory aspects that come into place. And that is what we try to achieve by giving that at hand to the supply side. We're entering, or what we're offering is 10-year offtake agreements at a fixed price, at fixed conditions. And that lays the basis on the supply side to start investing today. And on the demand side, we also have an option there where we try to provide supply into the market, provide liquidity, creating pricing signals on both sides, supply and demand side. And the way we do it is by implementing a physical intermediary. We call it the hydrogen intermediary company, Hintco.
Yeah.
We put that in between the supply and the demand side. And what Hintco does is something very stupid for a normal company. It buys a product at a relatively high price, sells it most likely much cheaper into the European markets. So Hintco is immediately bankrupt. And in order that this is not going to happen, that is when Hintco can call here the German government in Berlin and say, I need a subsidy to cover that cost of difference between the supply and the demand side. And that is how it works. And it's a little bit like a CFD mechanism. But for a CFD, you need liquidity in the market, and you need pricing signals, reference prices. Yeah. Since there is not a pricing signal, nor on the supply or on the demand side, that is what we're creating through a double auction that we implement here, an auction on the supply and an
auction on the demand. Yeah,
exactly.
And is it a unique solution? Where did the idea actually come from? Because it's pretty innovative.
The idea came around 2.5 years ago when we looked at existing subsidy schemes, whether it's capex based or CFDs, CCFDs, and we came to the conclusion that this is not really addressing the needs that we have. And the idea came really over a long weekend where we drafted the first sketches of H2 Global and the double auction system. Also, what we have there is a divergence in tenors. We provide long-term offtake agreements on the supply side, but only short-term sales agreements on the demand side, because we have two elements here that we have continuous pricing signals that we create through the ongoing auctions on the demand side, which is very important to stipulate the market ramp up or the market creation, first of all. And the second aspect is also that Hintco is able to benefit from any price movements, especially if the price that Hintco can achieve for a green product, so the green premium. We assume that the green premium will increase over the time. And so by having that short-tenured offtake agreements on the demand side, Hintco can limit the amount of subsidies that needs to be injected into the system. So that makes it a very efficient and taxpayer-friendly element, because it really is very, very less resource demanding. Yeah. But it's, from what we know, the first of its kind worldwide. So there's been lots of attention globally on the first auctions that we're currently conducting, and
Yeah. I mean, it brings to mind, I mean, clearly, obviously, also within the framework, you mentioned the German government sort of backing it, and clearly it does recall maybe what was a much more blunt instrument that was used for kickstarting the solar industry, which was obviously sort of clear feed-in tariffs, which obviously end up where the German taxpayer end up paying a large sum of money, and we're all grateful to you. But yeah, so that's fascinating. So in terms of where we are now, how is H2 Global going? Whereabouts are you in setting up the platform, the project? I've obviously seen a lot of interest from it being replicated on a European scale. So yeah, can you give us some feedback in terms of where you are in the process and
Sure. I mean, what we did, 2 years ago or 1.5 years ago, we founded the H2 Global Foundation. First of all, that was the first step, because the German government made it very clear that there shouldn't be a government-owned entity, which I first thought it should be. I thought HINTCO would be a state-owned entity. Government made it very clear we want the private sector to run this. But it's obviously a little bit of let's say, a compliance issue if the private sector runs its own subsidy scheme. So that's why we created the non-for-profit H2 Global Foundation, which my co-founder, Markus Exenberger, is heading. So we got nearly 60 donors to that foundation already throughout the entire hydrogen industry, not only from Germany, but from all over Europe, all over the world. And below that foundation, there we have the HINTCO as a daughter company, ensuring that there's no direct link between any of the funders or the donors that have no intersection directly with the underlying HINTCO and the ongoing auctions. We received for the first round, we call it the first H2 Global window, we call it like the window logic. For the first window, we received 900 million euros from the German government, BMWK, to cover for that cost of difference. And we started with the first round of auctions for 3 products. It's green ammonia, green methanol, and sustainable aviation fuel, which we are purchasing for the vicinity of 900 million, providing that 10-year offtake agreements, as I mentioned initially. And we're just in the middle of the process of that first tender. It's a 2-stage tender process. The first is the pre-qualification of the participants, and we're in the process to enter into the second stage, into the actual bidding stage on the supply side. And then hopefully in a couple of months' time, we will have the first pricing segment, signing the first contracts on the supply side. We have secured those 3 products.
Excellent. And in terms of the next steps, it's about scaling up both the supply and demand side. So for people watching this video, how should they get involved? What are some of the steps involved in getting onto the platform?
I mean, the foundation is like an independent platform. We're not a lobby institution or whatever. It's really like an independent platform where the public side and the private sector comes together with a joint idea. How can we shape that future or the uptake of the hydrogen economy? And it's a European international effort. As I said already, we got more than 60 or close to 60 institutions already being engaged in the platform. Also, we have the public side, not only from Germany, but the Dutch government, for example, is joining H2 Global, providing a 300 million euro commitment for another additional funding window. We're in discussions bringing in other member states from the European Union. There's lots of debates about how the European Hydrogen Bank will look like and whether H2 Global or the mechanism can play a role here. We believe it's quite a really effective instrument that can be used for the import, also for the production and offtake within Europe. It doesn't necessarily have to be an import instrument. It can also be used for the production within a region or within a country even. But yeah, so there are lots of different next steps being planned at the moment. Also, we are in discussions, or the government provided another 3.5 billion euros for the next round of auctions, which we are currently preparing together with the government. It's always important that it's always the provider of the funds, in this case BMWK, or with the Dutch government, it would be the Netherlands, also providing the clear guidance how the funds are being utilized, what geographies, where should the products come from, what products should be purchased, what are the green criteria that need to be implemented into the product. So all that design needs to be defined by the provider of the funds, not by HINTCO or the foundation. Because this is a very political sphere there, and this needs to be decided by the political side how they want to use the taxpayers' money here.
Yeah. So I mean, there's no carbon intensity measurements that is particular to the platform. It's simply a neutral tool that governments can use to officially allocate resources and help accelerate the markets. I mean, in terms of the mechanism, we've seen a lot of noise around the IRA in the US, which does appear to be a bit more of a blunt instrument, although again, sort of devil's in the detail. People are all talking about it's $3 a kilogram, where actually the detail is it's closer to sort of 60 cents plus various levels of other incentives. Any sort of thoughts in terms of that and the interest in the US versus what is also looking like a very good mechanism in Europe?
I mean, I just came back from the US last weekend, and it was very interesting because I was there like 6 months ago when at the Energy Ministerial, also when the hydrogen hubs have been announced. It was just shortly also after the announcement of the IRA. Yeah. It was crazy. There were like 6,000 delegates like on drugs. They couldn't believe what happened because, the US came very late to the party, but they really came big, so they really made a really bold move here. Yeah. And I think the IRA puts a lot of pressure also on the European side. We need to find an answer to that. And I agree with you. Yes, it looks very simple. If you look into the details, it's getting more complicated. I mean, we had like 2.5 years discussions about the delegated acts. I think also from what I realized last week in the US is they are very closely also following what is happening in Europe, for example, the delegated acts, because they need to do that definitions that is not yet being done under the IRA. Yeah. However, I believe it's a very powerful tool that they have at hand. But what really surprised me is that besides the IRA really addressing very well the supply side, we could already see, projects that were last year when I was there still on, just on a sketch board, they're suddenly approaching FID, going to implementation because that really, pulled like a lever there. Yeah. But this demand side might not pick up to the same extent because there will still be quite a significant gap even after the IRA between, the cheap shale gas and other energy forms that they have and the green energy. So there's a huge, let's say, I wouldn't call it risk, maybe also opportunity from a European point of view, but a lot of the production of hydrogen derivatives might end up being exported. Yeah. So the US actually approached us and said, listen, would it make sense maybe to have another instrument like H2 Global next to the IRA to also stipulate the demand side? So it's very interesting how things work together there. Yeah. The IRA is really, it's a very powerful tool and again, a very clear message to the world that things are moving.
Yeah. And I mean, on that specific point in terms of beneficiaries of the IRA in the US exporting into Europe and using the H2 platform, that would work, surely.
It will work, yes. I mean, we just made very clear that we can't allow any double subsidies. So you cannot have $1, double subsidized. But we can import products that have received a subsidy, but it must be very clear how that subsidy led to a reduced offering price. And then this is fine. So in theory, yes, we could also import from the US.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, it's a fascinating area. It's going to be a fascinating. It's been fascinating already to see the scale of the ambitions, as you said. Huge amounts of MOUs and very few FIDs, and now we're beginning to get into a bit more the business end as we start seeing hopefully projects coming across the line into FID, and certainly well done on the mechanism. We look forward to seeing it scale and helping promote it. you're speaking at the World Hydrogen Congress, which is this October, again in Rotterdam. So it's we look forward to following the H2 Global story. So many thanks, Timo.
Pleasure. It was nice being here and looking forward to October then.
Cheers. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.